Hello friends of Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah. I'm Rosie Nguyen, and I am thrilled to welcome you all to Bans Off Our Bodies 2021, a virtual rally to protect reproductive freedom in Utah. Now more than ever, we must come together and make our voices heard. While we have a new administration in Washington, states such as ours are experiencing the after effects of 4 years of attacks on our democracy. There is a new landscape in the fight for our rights with the dramatically changed Supreme Court makeup, redistricting, and attacks on voting rights. This year, reproductive rights are at risk like never before, as we wait for arguments in the Dobbs v. Jackson case challenging Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban. In June, the court will announce their decision, one that could gut Roe and leave millions of Americans without access to abortion care, including Utahns. As someone who has personally depended on Planned Parenthood for safe and affordable health care, I know how crucial their services are. Since I was a teenager, Planned Parenthood has provided the reproductive care that I needed as someone growing up in a low-income family. This care allowed me to stay healthy and to choose the life that I want to live. Just a few weeks ago, more than 1,000 Utahns joined a nationwide movement to rally and march for abortion justice. The Planned Parenthood Action Council team was there and worked tirelessly behind the scenes with grassroots organizers and partner organizations to make sure many voices were heard. We know that access to abortion is critical for equality and freedom, and that is just one part of achieving full health. Dr. Misha Pangasa, who spoke at the Abortion Justice Rally alongside PPAU President and CEO Carrie Galloway, said, quote, "As an OBGYN, it wasn't long before I realized that my medical knowledge, expertise, or compassion would never be enough for some of my patients if the structures and systems of our country kept putting up roadblocks. Your support helps us make this critical work of mobilizing supporters happen. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and for standing with us in the fight for abortion justice and affordable health care and comprehensive age-appropriate sex education." I am so thrilled to introduce Carrie Galloway, the President and CEO of Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah, for our opening remarks. She's here to rally us all and tell us about the important advocacy and political work of the Planned Parenthood in our state. Please help me welcome Carrie Galloway.
My name is Carrie Galloway, and I'm the President and CEO of Planned Parenthood Association of Utah and our sister organization, Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah, which we're all here tonight celebrating. Sexual and reproductive health care, rights, and freedoms for all Utahns is what I work for every day. Planned Parenthood has been in Utah for 50 years, providing clinical services, community education, and fighting to protect the rights of everyone. We know that 2021 has been a challenging year for all of us, including those fighting for reproductive freedom. But we have also had some victories. The 2021 legislative session had no anti-choice pieces of legislation. This was a remarkable victory for the reproductive rights and health care. Thanks to every person who spoke out, who talked to their legislators, who shared personal stories, and who donated. We are grateful for each and every one of you, and we also saw some victories. Contraceptive access with the passage of HB 102, contraception for inmates, sponsored by Representative Jan Daly Provost and Senator Luz Escamilla. Other victories included the passage of 2 bills that help low-income people with fertility management. We recognize that here in Utah, we have counted on little, small victories. And that means acknowledging steps towards more empathy, compassion, that happen by having the hard conversations about topics like race, equity, disparities, consent, and education, and the prevalence of sexual abuse in Utah. A few weeks ago, over 1,000 Utahns joined a nationwide movement to rally and march for abortion justice. This rally was one of 640 events that happened all over the country. It was incredibly heartening to see real people, albeit with masks on, committed to abortion access and gathered to hear firsthand stories about abortion changed their lives for the better. Here in Utah and many other states, politicians have systematically chipped away at abortion access. This includes forcing people to travel long distances, wait days between appointments, sit through stigmatizing scripted presentations, pay out of pocket without insurance, and make child care decisions that are difficult to access. They have passed abortion ban after abortion ban in hopes that one of these cases would make it to the Supreme Court to challenge Roe v. Wade. Now they have their chance. On December 1st, a case challenging Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban will be heard by the Supreme Court. This ruling will have far-reaching consequences, potentially putting abortion care out of reach for millions of Americans, including Utahns. This is a red alert moment for abortion justice. Reproductive rights and access are critical to the quality of people's lives and the overall quality of the communities we all live in. No one should have to justify their decision to have an abortion. Abortion is health care, and everyone deserves to make that decision that is best for them. With so much at stake, we must link arms, as we are doing here today. This is going to take all of us. There's so much to do, and there's room for everyone to do what they do best. Get involved, volunteer, run for office, talk to your legislators, your family and friends. Write letters to the editor. If it doesn't work the first time, try it again. There are so many things that we can do to change the course of history. Donate is a big one. Good research of messaging costs money. Strategy on who to talk to and when to talk to them also takes money. And it takes money to buy placement for public messaging. All of this to win the fight for reproductive justice. Every day, Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah is advocating for each of us to live our best lives. We are in the fight of a lifetime to ensure that everyone has access to the health care and information they need, and that abortion remains legal and accessible for all. Let's learn, rally, and fight together. Thank you so much for supporting Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah.
Carrie, thank you for staying in this fight, for your steadfast leadership, your compassion, and for the reminder that though times are tough, Planned Parenthood's mission and work will continue no matter what. Let's take a moment to remember that there were no new abortion restrictions passed in 2021, thanks to the incredible supporters and team at PPAC alongside their partners in advocacy. In Utah, we continue to fight as we have for more than 50 years to ensure that our entire population has access on information on how to protect themselves, access to affordable contraception and abortion care. Politicians want to take even information away from those who are most vulnerable in Utah. Not only access to care, but basic information regarding health care. Without the work of our supporters and all of you, we would not be able to help so many and continue to keep these services accessible to the public. It is now my honor to introduce our amazing musical guest, Madam Bandit, who you may know as local indie pop recording artist, Mindy Gledhill. Mindy has recorded multiple successful indie albums, and her forthcoming EP entitled Punch You in the Face freely explores themes of sexual liberation and feminism.
Hi, my name's Madam Bandit. I'm a recording artist and a really big fan of Planned Parenthood. Here's why. Planned Parenthood provides care to anyone, no matter what. They are a resource of information and sex education regarding our bodies and our reproductive rights. Knowledge is power. There were times as a young person when I did not have the education and I did not have the support or the resources to confront some really scary situations for me. I would have done anything to have an organization like Planned Parenthood available to me. I think I've dealt with a lot of frustration and anger in my life due to not having the support I needed during those times. For me, my own therapy is writing music and putting my thoughts into songs. This is called punch you in the face.
Don't want you coming here and acting like you own the place. Don't have the bandwidth for your drama in my database. And if you think that you can try to call me doll face, you best believe that I'ma punch you in the face like ha! You best believe that I'ma punch you in the face like ha! Hey everybody, I'ma shout it from the rooftop to all the boys who wanna work me like a sweatshop. Whoever paid me like a demo at a record shop. I don't need your shitty validation, full stop. Hey everybody, I'ma shout it from the rooftop to all the boys who wanna work me like a sweatshop. Whoever paid me like a demo at a record shop. I don't need your shitty validation, full stop. No thank you, I don't wanna ride in your Mercedes. Don't need your money, I'm an independent lady. And if you think I like it when you call me baby, you best believe that I'ma punch you in the face. Not gonna marry you, not gonna take your last name. Not gonna be your trophy wife just for the Insta fame. And if you think that you can win me like a poker game, you best believe that I'ma punch you in the face. Hey everybody, I'ma shout it from the rooftop to all the boys who wanna work me like a sweatshop. Whoever paid me like a demo at a record shop. I don't need your shitty validation, full stop. Hey everybody, I'ma shout it from the rooftop to all the boys who wanna work me like a sweatshop. Whoever paid me like a demo at a record shop. I don't need your shitty validation, full stop. You'll find that I am not a fool for your sweet talk. I'm like a dead footlock. The clicks before you knock. And if you don't believe that no means no, I'm pleased to offer you a front row ticket to the gun show up my sleeve. Hey everybody, I'ma shout it from the rooftop to all the boys who wanna work me like a sweatshop. Whoever paid me like a demo at a record shop. I don't need your shitty validation, full stop. Hey everybody, I'ma shout it from the rooftop to all the boys who wanna work me like a sweatshop. Whoever paid me like a demo at a record shop. I don't need your shitty validation, full stop.
Thank you, Madam Bandit, for your energizing performance.
Hola, Planned Parenthood Association of Utah. This is Jehemi, pronounces they, them. And I want to have a time today to thank you for all the hard work that you have done during this pandemic. And also, I want to invite you to continue fighting for all of us. We need you. Hola, Planned Parenthood Association de Utah. Soy Jehemi, mis pronombres son ella, they, them. Y el día de hoy quería tomarme el tiempo para agradecerte por el trabajo tan maravilloso que has estado haciendo durante esta pandemia. También quiero continuar haciéndote la invitación de que sigas peleando con nosotros, para todos nosotros, por la libertad de todos nosotros. Gracias.
Hey, Planned Parenthood Utah, thanks for all you do. It's never been more important that we stand together in protecting reproductive rights than it is right now. The kind of attacks that we've seen in Texas and other states, I expect we'll see them come to Utah. I'll stand firm in making sure that we work together to protect reproductive rights in this state.
It can take a lifetime to be brave, and that's okay. It took me 26 years. Every single woman has a face behind that makeup, behind those dress clothes. And every single woman has some type of a tragedy to tell. We need to be able to stand up for one another and be able to help one another. And sometimes sharing our stories and being brave may be the best way to be able to help. I encourage all of us to stand up together and to be able to be strong and to be able to do things that are going to be able to help women in the state of Utah and outside of the state of Utah to be able to have and reach different options and choices for their own bodies. I want to thank all of the women and all of the people in my life that have helped me be brave and strong. I sure do feel like I can take my makeup off and be who I am and help others now. And I hope that you can someday too.
And now I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Meera Shah. Dr. Shah, in addition to serving as the Chief Medical Officer at Planned Parenthood Hudson-Peconic in New York, is a trailblazer for social justice and a tireless advocate for abortion justice and access to quality, equitable health care. And also, she's a newly published author of You're the Only One I've Told. Here to inspire us, Dr. Shah.
Hi, everyone. I am Candida Duran Taveras. My pronouns are she and ella, and I am the Director of Community Engagement for Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah. I am here with Dr. Meera Shah, who is the Chief Medical Officer at Planned Parenthood Hudson-Peconic and the author of the book, You're the Only One I've Told, The Stories Behind Abortion. I'm really excited to be here with Dr. Shah. I have just recently started reading their book, and just the introduction alone blew me away. And the stories have just been so captivating. So I just wanted to thank you so much for compiling them and for putting together such an amazing book. And we can just get started with a couple of questions that I had for you. And I want to start with just asking you what inspired you to share your patient stories. I know that not everyone in the book is a patient of yours, but what inspired you to create such a beautiful compilation of stories?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and giving me that really kind introduction. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm super excited to chat about all things related to this very important work. And so what inspired me to write this book? People ask me this a lot. I have always been, even at a young age, I've always, been very vocal about my views and my opinions and the way in which I think the world should be. And so I followed the path of medicine and honestly didn't like it very much. I just felt like I was going through the motions and just nothing really felt authentic and nothing felt like I could really, have the most impact. And so it wasn't until residency in my family medicine residency. And it's interesting that I chose family medicine because I thought, well, if I'm not really drawn to any one specialty, let me choose a specialty where I can have the most impact with various populations, primarily lower income populations. And so it wasn't until residency when I came introduced to sexual and reproductive health and sort of all of the politics and stigma and shame that surround it, because for me as a healthcare provider, I'm like, this is just so basic and so common and it impacts everyone. And why are there policymakers out there restricting access? It didn't make sense to me. And so I know what I know, and, from doing this every single day and seeing real people experiencing real issues and needing real basic health care. And I just was constantly seeing false narratives in the media. And even just from everyday conversations with family, with friends. And so I decided to put pen to paper and use my voice. And, I intentionally didn't use patient stories because I recognize that as a physician, I hold privilege and power. And it's palpable in an exam room, right? Like I walk in, even though I don't wear a white coat, because I think that adds to this dynamic that I'm trying to sort of steer away from. But at the end of the day, a patient comes and should be able to be vulnerable to their provider. And I didn't want patients to feel like they had to say yes to me if I asked them to share their story in more depth. And so what I did was I asked folks who had shared their story with me in various settings, and I describe for most of the stories I've described how I met the storytellers.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
To donate tonight, please text PP Utah to 41444.
So it was very important to me to take what I know from my daily work and be an advocate. It just feels like it's in my job description, even though, it's not technically written there. I feel like it is my duty as a physician to share what I know in order to try and advocate for more access to basic needs and basic healthcare services that are constantly being chipped away at.
Yes, I love that you keep saying real basic healthcare, because that's exactly what it is. And I love the line in your book where you say that they had a full life before the abortion and will have a full life after, because it really, like, the abortion does not define you. Like, you have a life before and you can continue to have a life. And that really just like emphasizes how this is just like basic healthcare, and we really need to destigmatize abortion. And by destigmatizing it, we're allowing people to use their stories, use their voice, and sharing without the fear of being judged or perceived as someone who made a bad choice. So I love that use of that language. And I also love the use of like inclusive language within your book. And I love that you made that distinction at the start in the introduction of like using inclusive versus neutral language, and how neutral language sometimes erases Black women. And Black women are disproportionately affected when it comes to reproductive, not having access to reproductive health care. So I'd love to hear a little bit more on your experience with like using inclusive language and why that's so important to you. I know that I, as a woman who identifies as Black, and I am very light and very racially ambiguous passing, but it is something that I see quite often when we're talking about like neutral language, we erase the community who is most affected by, disproportionately affected by the lack of access.
Definitely. And I'm so glad you bring that up, because I think that language, especially in the space that we work, is constantly evolving. We used to say, what are your preferred pronouns? But it's not a preference, right? Like they're the pronouns that I use. I don't prefer to use she, hers. I use she, hers, right? And so now we just say, what are your pronouns? In the same way, instead of saying gender neutral, which is what was more common, we say gender inclusive. And that's because I strive to use inclusive language because it really describes the reality of those seeking services and those benefiting from the services that we provide.
In your book, you say that abortion does not occur in isolation. There is always a story. And with language, storytelling is such a huge component of like being human. And I just wanted to ask you, what did you learn, or what was that experience like while writing this book and listening to these stories and learning from the stories that you collected?
What did I not learn? I swear, doing those interviews was like one of the highlights of my life. I'll never forget that. And I learned that the human experience is varied, and we can't put, I know it's really common for politicians and lawmakers to put all abortions like in the same bucket. And that's not fair. And it just shows what they don't know. And so I really tried to include the variety that I see in my exam room on paper. And I knew this before, but it wasn't until I wrote the book that the point was really driven home that diversity is missing in abortion storytelling, and that there's so many narratives that are missing. There's so many things that I learned, and that there was so much that that book really, the experience of writing that book really taught me, and that I carry with my work now, which is just to exercise even more compassion for those who come to receive abortion care, because we have no idea what they're going through. And I tell my staff that all the time. We're meeting them for like an hour, And, you have to realize that that they have a whole life. And I hope that people who read my book can appreciate that, and gain a glimpse of what it is to be just an individual who's trying to do their best.
I did just want to, because you end your introduction with saying that until there's reproductive freedom for all, that you'll continue to do this work. So I did want to ask you, what does abortion justice look like to you?
So unfortunately, I think at the rate we're going, I'll still be doing this right up until I take my last breath. But so, abortion justice looks like, well, access for all, right? So individuals being able to create an abortion experience that is right for them. So no cost, government funded abortion access in the same way that prenatal care is covered by commercial insurances and publicly funded insurance plans. Abortion care should be too, in all states, not just the 17 who have decided to interpret the Hyde Amendment differently. Because that would be a way for lower income and mostly Black and brown people to access abortion care. It would be no waiting periods, no mandatory ultrasound, only on ultrasound if it is indicated, no state mandated counseling that includes lies, right? That abortion causes breast cancer, abortion causes PTSD, abortion causes depression, all things that I know as a scientist and as a physician that aren't true. It would be destigmatization of abortion care in medical training. So there would be telemedicine abortion available to those who want that, because if that's what they want their abortion experience to look like, then they should be able to have it. So reproductive justice, abortion justice, to me means that an individual is able to have an abortion in a way that feels authentic to them, and a method that is evidence-based, rooted in science, and is accessible to all people with regards to their finances. So that's what it looks like to me.
I do want to thank you one more time for spending this time with me. It was been really nice to just hear more of what your experience has been like writing this book, and your insight within some of the parts of your introduction that I really resonated with.
I just want to thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share more about my book and sort of my experiences about writing it, which is one that I really loved, and just to continue talking about it through conversations like this. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. I, for one, can't wait to read your book. And don't go anywhere yet, because now Dr. Shaw will be joined by a panel of fellow reproductive freedom advocates to continue the conversation about abortion justice and the power of storytelling. Planned Parenthood of Utah's Director of Communications and Marketing, Katrina Barker, will lead a conversation with Dr. Shaw, former Utah State Legislator and community engagement expert Rebecca Chavez-Hauk, and sex and relation therapist Kristen Hodson.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katrina Barker, the Director of Communications and Marketing for Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah. Really excited to be here tonight and joined by this panel of really amazing women, and excited to do a little brief intro of each of them, and then we're going to have a conversation tonight. And so I'll start with Dr. Mira Shaw. She is joining us from New York. And as you know, you just saw her in conversation with my colleague Candida, and we're really excited to have her continue this conversation with us. We're also joined by Rebecca Chavez-Hauk, who is a longtime friend of Planned Parenthood. She's a former legislator and a former board chair of Planned Parenthood of Utah. super excited to have her here. Also still very involved in many things, advocacy and politics in Utah. And last but not least, joined by Kristen Hodson, who is a board certified sex therapist. She is an amazing resource for women of Utah, families of Utah. Definitely excited to hear from her today, and I'm excited to hear from all of you. So the goal of this conversation is to come from, have this intersectional group of women, and we are going to talk about abortion and how sharing stories and having those open conversations really helps advance understanding and helps advance abortion justice and reproductive freedom. So I want to start, and I'm going to kick this to Rebecca, with how does storytelling help advance reproductive justice, reproductive freedom, abortion access? You've been doing this a really long time. How have you seen storytelling be an integral part of that?
Well, I'm going to share some experiences that I've had not only as a state legislator, but as an advocate, not only for reproductive justice, but on a variety of societal issues. I've worked in issues related to immigration reform, and in health and human services policy as a legislator and as an advocate. And I'm going to talk about what I've seen with policymakers when stories are shared with them. What I've noticed is that, especially if the legislator has a connection of some sort, or they somehow can relate to the person with whom they're having a conversation, the more it starts to move them towards moving beyond the myths and misconceptions of what they think a particular public policy might be about. So, for example, one of the more conservative legislative colleagues that I served with, I noticed he was running a lot of bills related to opioid addiction and helping individuals that are struggling with substance abuse and their families. And it was very interesting to see him working on this, because this really wasn't his bailiwick. And then I came to find out that it was neighbors or people in his community, constituents, parents who were struggling with individuals in their families that were struggling with opioid addiction. And it's because of that personal connection. It was because it moved beyond those things happen to other people scenarios, and it moved to, this is a family that I care about, and this is an issue that has impacted them greatly. What can I do as a policymaker? So I find when policymakers hear from people with whom they can identify, and even if they don't, sometimes it's just something clicks. They commiserate, they have an affinity for, they have an empathy for the story that's being told to them. And it may not happen with the first person that tells a story. It may take 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 times someone sharing a story about their own experience that it's an aha moment for those policymakers or for other people with whom you want to express that each story is an individual situation, and the circumstances can vary so greatly. And regardless if it's circumstances or not, and regardless if it's someone that you know, I mean, you would wish that people would make these decisions more broadly because it's in the best interest of community health and individual rights. But sometimes it just takes that connection or understanding or that click with, oh my gosh, I can understand what you're saying. And I've seen it change minds. I've seen the right story, the right person with a certain legislator that will change their mind.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. Kristen, what have you seen as, a clinician, as a mom, as someone who is so open, on your social media in trying to educate folks? Like, I'm sure that you get so many people coming to you, being willing to share their stories with you, not only in your professional setting, but just as a human and as a friend.
Yeah.
What can you tell us how some of those experiences have been for you?
Well, I really appreciate what Rebecca said, because at the core of this, the centering, I think, of storytelling is empathy. That when we talk about abortion, it can be on such a big macro level and it can be dehumanized, that we're talking about the issue instead of the people that are at the center of that story. And what I have found is when a mother is now connecting with their daughter, and that mother was like, abortion is never an option. And then she hears her daughter's story, and she hears her thought process, and she hears her emotions, and she hears everything around it. There can be a connection and an understanding and a softening, and it makes it less about abortion being a right or a wrong or this issue, and it makes it more about this relationship. And so I see that through stories, people are able to connect and also move out of isolation, because I think this is something that you may think abortion is happening only to certain kinds of people, or it's categorically happening over here or there, when it's happening to everyone. I mean, this is a valid choice for women to manage a pregnancy that's not planned. And I think stories also then make it be like, oh, this is happening to women from all walks of life. And so I think there's something there that also moves women out of isolation. They realize they're not alone. When they hear other stories, they right there feel connected, and then they don't have to isolate.
Yeah, and Dr. Shaw, you just wrote an entire book full of abortion stories. And, I loved your introduction when you really hit home that people, when they find out who you are and what you do, are so much more willing to share their story with you. And I found that even as just somebody who works for Planned Parenthood, but as someone who is providing that care, I'm sure it's 100-fold. What has it been like to be the receiver of so many stories and to hold those and then to also share them with the world in the way that you've been able to through your book?
It's been an incredible honor. And I am very grateful that the storytellers have trusted me with their stories, and it's been truly such an honor in my life to be able to advocate for them through my writing, for the policy work that I do at the state and the national level. I mean, it's truly been incredible. And Rebecca was talking about how to really feel empathy towards to an individual's experience, whether it be through opioid addiction, whether it be through an abortion experience. And it's really, when something touches you, right, personally, whether it be your family member, whether it be a loved one. And I can't help but think it made me think of my own experience with my mother and how. So I'm from, my parents were both born in India, immigrated to the United States in their 20s. And so I was born in South Carolina and grew up in a pretty conservative culture in a conservative state. I come from a family of physicians. And so when I started to do this work, they were accepting because my father's very much like, well, it's a medical procedure. But I don't think they quite understood sort of the emotional aspect of it, right? About how it's being challenged in so many ways, and bad policy is impacting the most vulnerable people, and what that experience has been like, and how life affirming it is, and sort of all the other things around just the procedure itself. And it wasn't until I started to provide abortion care to Gujarati speaking people that my mother in particular really realized, oh wow, like abortion is really common, because she knew all the stats, right? Like she could say exactly what I've taught her, right? 1 in 4 people have an abortion, and abortion is really safe, and it doesn't impact future fertility, and she can say all these things. But in speaking about sexual reproductive health care with like the right words. And, now my mom is like, wow, like my people have abortions, because I've told her, right? Like today I did an abortion for a Gujarati speaking woman, and, I don't share the whole story, and I definitely don't, I'm very HIPAA compliant, but I, share a little bit like, well, she, has 2 children and is working in a store and full time, and they just bought it, and they're really just trying to make ends meet. And it just, she just didn't want to have a third. And now my mom just tells all of her girlfriends, she loves to talk about the fact that I do abortions for her people, and that like her people have abortions, and that's how common it is. And it was really eye-opening for her.
I love that story a lot. And it really gets my wheels turning as far as, here in Utah. I mean, we are obviously, everyone here knows that Utah's a more conservative state. We've seen restriction after restriction passed. And we have on the books a law that is going to make almost all abortions in the state illegal if Roe v. Wade is overturned. And so we're, definitely one of these red alert states that could lose access for most people, depending on how this Mississippi case goes. And, and down the line, what happens with Texas. And, there's just so much at stake right now in the world, which is a big part of why we wanted to really frankly, talk about abortion and how we can have these conversations with the people in our lives. An anecdote from some of the work that we've done here in Utah is we did some focus groups a couple years ago now. And we, the people were brought in specifically because they were not, measured as favorable for abortion. They were on the, ranked more, they didn't really agree with it. And that's part of why we brought them in for the focus groups. And in the course of the conversation that was facilitated in those focus groups, I saw so many stories come out and so many people really show so much nuance and so much compassion and empathy when they started talking about it. And when they actually had a conversation, even in a fairly sterile environment, like a research conference room, because they don't have the opportunity to talk about this very often. And suddenly they were given that opportunity. I would love to hear from any of you, your thoughts on how we facilitate these conversations or help feel more comfortable or help others feel more comfortable in having them. Because I really have seen, just like your mom, Dr. Shaw, that when you can talk about it and really show like, this is my neighbor, this is my sister, this is my niece, this is my cousin, this is my mom, this is my daughter, this is my best friend. These are the people in my life that I love having these experiences. The stigma goes way down and the compassion goes way up.
I have one thing to add is that I think the best advice I was ever given, and the advice that I continue to give to trainees, is don't whisper the word abortion. Say it with confidence and say it with a smile, because I think more often than not, people will be speaking at just like a conversational tone, and then all of a sudden whisper abortion. Right? Well, what they just did was worsen that stigma. Why are you whispering it? Like, it's okay. It's a normal word. It's not a bad word. Say it out loud, say it with pride, and say it with a smile, because then people will attach that smile to the word, right? And give it a good connotation. So I
think you said a word, Katrina, that I feel like is how people can start to open up is nuance, and that's what stories do, is it starts to move it out of this black and white, right or wrong, all or nothing space, and starts to put in details. And again, it's that empathy piece. Empathy softens and connects and bridges. Empathy serves as a total bridge. And when you talk about abortion, and again, you don't pause, you don't hesitate, like Dr. Shaw is saying, you say it with a smile. I feel like then it creates space and gives permission to have that conversation. And what I find is when people do that, there is a permission giving, and then you find more people are willing to actually speak up about their abortions. What I have found is there are way more people that have had abortions around us than we know, because there haven't been spaces to speak and share and connect, because abortion is such a taboo currently and doesn't have to be. It can be integrated into all of our health conversations that we're trying to move forward and progress and make it one of the options that someone can choose of what's best for them, instead of you have this option, and then abortion is said under breath or as the last choice. So
the other thing that I'd want to add to the discussion is to not make assumptions about who people are and how they might feel about an issue. Especially when you're dealing with people who may be moderate or more conservative on the ideological spectrum. I had a conversation with a friend a couple of years ago and started the conversation because she is conservative. And I said, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this issue and to be in conversation with people. And I know that you're very conservative and probably not pro-choice. And she said, wait. She says, let me tell you. And then she had a conversation with me about she was a doula and experiences that she had with women that had changed her perspective over time about this issue. And, when I finished that phone call and that conversation, I realized I was being presumptuous about these things. And you just got to start somewhere and don't make an assumption about somebody because of their ideological, their political leaning, their religion, who they are culturally, because they will surprise you. And so, step into that space and start those conversations.
So we are definitely in a moment where abortion is being talked about more. We have a Supreme Court case that is, Roe v. Wade is on the cusp of being overturned, depending on how the case from Mississippi goes this year. We have this horrific law in Texas that has been getting so much attention. And as I mentioned earlier, here in Utah, we are also could lose that access very easily because of the laws that we already have on the books. And I should also say that there are already so many restrictions that make abortion difficult to get right now in Utah and in many other states, and that really limit the ability of so many people to access this really important healthcare. So I want us to kind of end with hearing from each of you in this moment that we are in, where our access to abortion and our legal right to abortion is at risk, like it's never been before. How are you feeling about that? How are you?
So abortion is always having a moment, but it's like really having a moment right now. And, I've dedicated my career to this work, and it can be really tiring, right? Because there's like something new going on in outside of my little bubble in New York. And I'm very plugged into various networks and various movements, micro movements within the bigger movement, and do work with Whole Women's Health Alliance, with Physicians for Reproductive Health, with Planned Parenthood Federation. So like I'm indirectly or directly involved in so many ways. And, it can be really hard. And a lot of my close friends are abortion providers in Texas and have been, reporting back from the front lines and saying how hard it is. I have patients who are flying from Texas to New York to get abortion care, right? And they're the ones who have the means to do that. So that's not everybody. I think there's a lot of attention being put on this idea that, oh God, now they're going to have to travel. Okay, well, yes, but that's, again, only the people who have the means to logistically make that happen and financially make that happen. So let's not say, oh, well, they're just going to travel, because that's not the case for everyone. The impact of what's happening right now is it's really scary. And we need federal level protection around abortion access. We've known that for a long time, but now it's really underscoring the importance of that. It is impacting my work, my psyche, in a way that I had never imagined.
Yeah, as a mental health provider, I think that's what comes up, because we know the research shows that having an abortion doesn't lead to depression, anxiety, PTSD, but not having the freedom to have bodily autonomy and make choices regarding your body and your future and your current family and all those things does have an impact on depression and anxiety, and specifically maternal mental health. And being able to choose when and how you're going to grow your family is really, really important. So I look at as they're trying to restrict access to abortion and make it more difficult or to overturn it, it's it's going to shift problems. It's not going, it may solve this sliver of a problem that we're thinking we're trying to solve, but ultimately isn't the solution. And so from a mental health standpoint, that's where my advocacy really increases, simply being in a state that we're one of the highest highest for children and families, and wanting to reduce postpartum depression and anxiety. And again, being able to grow your family in a way that fits is a really important piece to that. So that's heavy on my mind and really drives why I want to continue to be a part of this.
So I'm feeling all sorts of emotions right now. I am recalling back, oh my gosh, when my daughter, who is now 32 years old, we went to a protest at the Capitol when she was a toddler, an older infant, and I remember having her in my backpack and going to a rally at the Capitol. And over the past few years, I'm thinking, well, we're making movement. And then to be where we're at presently just wears very heavy on my heart. That daughter of mine just had a little girl last year, brand new baby. And it's baffling to me that I'm thinking about the things that I was worried about for my daughter 30 years ago when we were at that rally. And now I'm thinking about that for my granddaughter. And the fact that we still have to have these same conversations and these dealing with these same myths and misconceptions and fighting the same fight. But it is crucial. It is important. All of these attacks on access and care are meant to obfuscate. They're meant to confuse, because it even goes beyond what Dr. Shaw mentioned about just that direct access. How do these services get offered? But the fact that the legislation is being run, that the courts rule the way they do, are there to intend to confuse that young person or that person wherever they are, regardless of their age, in an isolated area, who now just knows, that I can't get an abortion. What am I supposed to do? And so it's for that person that I keep working, and I think we all feel that way. And I encourage those that are watching. It gets discouraging, but I think of the women that went before me and the women that went before them to fight for women's health care and for reproductive justice and for justice generally, because this is a power and privilege issue at its core. And we have to fight for it in that regard, for all those women, and for the people to come to have that access.
Thank you, Rebecca. I feel like that was a perfect ending to this conversation. I really appreciate each of you for taking the time to share your thoughts and feelings and experiences with us today. And I'll just say that I feel lucky to be part of this group and to be part of this movement. And, let's keep going. We'll keep going. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw, Rebecca, Kristen, and Katrina for your insights, example, and dedication to advancing reproductive freedom and destigmatizing abortion care.
At Planned Parenthood of Utah, our mission is to empower Utahns of all ages to make informed choices about your sexual health, ensure access to affordable, quality health care and education, and to protect your reproductive freedom. We work every day to help people live full, healthy lives, no matter your income, insurance, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, or immigration status. We know that for many people, systemic discrimination creates barriers to getting the health care they need. That's why Planned Parenthood will not rest until all those who are disproportionately affected by restrictions on health care get the access they deserve. At 8 health centers across the state, Planned Parenthood provides high-quality, comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care services with respect and compassion to tens of thousands of Utahns each year. As an integral part of the public health ecosystem, Planned Parenthood provides more STI tests, pregnancy tests, and birth control services than any other provider in the state, and promotes research and technology that enhances reproductive health care and access. PPAU educators provide medically accurate sex education that advances understanding of human sexuality, healthy relationships, and body autonomy. And we couldn't do any of this without Planned Parenthood Action Council, the political and advocacy arm of Planned Parenthood in Utah, working to advance public policies that protect and expand reproductive rights and healthcare access for all. Through our statewide network of supporters, Birds and the Beehive ambassadors, and college organizers, we smash stigma, build bridges, learn and grow, and fight for the rights of all.
Just wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you to everyone at the Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah. Thank you for everything that you do to ensure that our reproductive rights are protected. Thank you for ensuring that healthcare is accessible and equitable for everyone in Utah. And thank you for mobilizing our communities to make sure that we all have a voice at the legislative table.
Hi, Planned Parenthood of Utah. Don't stop fighting. We need you in the work, and you're doing great. Keep it up.
Hello, my name is Andres Fierro Morales. I'm a patient, supporter, and volunteer for Planned Parenthood of Utah. Thank you for everything that you do, and keep on fighting.
Thank you to our loyal supporters. Planned Parenthood would not have made it this far without supporters like you. Storytelling is one of the oldest and most important ways of teaching. When we share stories, we begin to change hearts and minds. We make authentic connections. As we reflect on the monumental challenges we have overcome and the major battles still ahead, I am inspired by the thousands of Utahns who have joined the Hive, made calls for endorsed candidates, made calls to their legislators, emailed friends and family to get involved, and marched for abortion justice just last month. I'm inspired by the determination of our advocates to defend access to comprehensive reproductive health care and rights, and by the everyday courage our patients demonstrate when they make their own health care a priority, which is why I'm so excited to introduce our next guests. Joining us now are Jocelyn and Angela, who have come today to tell us their stories of how access to abortion care has impacted their lives.
I hope you will hear my story and others like it and realize that abortion care is crucial and should be free and accessible to every person. When I learned that my husband and I were expecting a baby girl, I dreamed of her running around my childhood home in Idaho, digging in the dirt with Grandpa and baking in the kitchen with Grandma. I couldn't wait. On September 5th, 2012, we went for our 16-week sonogram. We squeezed each other's hands when we heard her little heartbeat. We watched with wonder as the technician measured and commented on each little body part, but soon she grew silent. As she left, she said the doctor would be in to talk about the diagnosis. Diagnosis? We looked at each other. The doctor came in, sat on an office chair, and rolled over to the exam table. She spoke softly. Our baby was missing an arm bone. the ulna. She was measuring very small, too small. She had extreme skeletal dysplasia and her lungs would never grow large enough to survive. The diagnosis? Thanatophoric dysplasia, incompatible with life. At home, still in shock, we pored over our laptops to research everything we could find out about thanatophoric dysplasia. We found that even if she survived to term, she would live in uncontrollable pain and only with extreme intervention. There were very few cases where the baby lived longer than a few hours. We looked at each other and we knew. We had to make a decision as her parents. We had to protect her from life. On Friday, September 14th, 2012, my husband and my best friend sat with me as we checked into the hospital. The nurses were thoughtful and warm as they wheeled me into the operating room. And I remember thinking how painful and how incredibly sad it would be for me to carry the baby full term and see people at work and have people come up to me and talk, when's the baby due? Those kind of questions would have been, I don't know if I could have recovered emotionally from taking the baby full term. I know some people might make that choice and may have hope that there can be a miracle, but for me, I wanted to care for her and then move on with my life. We were terrified that we wouldn't be able to have a successful pregnancy. We didn't know when or how to try again, if it would happen again. So we had, really stressful pregnancies after that. I now have 2 beautiful children. But what I know is that having a baby is not the safest thing in the world. When my second daughter was born, I had a uterine rupture, and it was really traumatic. And so I've kind of experienced that moment. And looking around in my OB's office and talking to the geneticist that we met with and all of the other doctors, you could see the stress in their face as we were considering taking it to term. And they said that there had been another woman who did a while prior and that it had been traumatic for everyone, not just the mother. The doctors still suffered because it was just so hard. And I was so lucky that I didn't have to hide it. There was no stigma really because we had this fatal diagnosis. So I can't even imagine if I were making choices and felt like I didn't have a support system to talk to or friends that would, support me. It just, it would have been such a different situation. And, I knew that even if we had to go to a different state or, another country, my parents could help me do that. And it's important to remember that probably everyone out there knows someone who's had an abortion and loves someone who's had an abortion. And when you say things that are negative about that, they don't dare come to you, they don't dare share. And I hope that my example can help someone else find their voice.
Well, I guess my story is that I found out I was pregnant earlier this year. I wasn't expecting to be pregnant, and it's not something that I was hoping for or wanted to be. And I luckily had someone who was pretty supportive about, all of my emotions, and so they were able to kind of walk me through stuff. But it was still very overwhelming and not something that I necessarily anticipated. And so I found out I was pregnant. I immediately called Planned Parenthood and was able to set up an appointment with their help fairly quickly. But again, I was kind of at my 4th entering 5th week mark of my pregnancy because I had just noticed that I missed my period. And so, was kind of far along, I would say. But Planned Parenthood was able to get me in, and so that was half of the battle. The next step was to take some time off of work, and it was work that I had just started. I had just started a new job, and so it was really nerve-wracking kind of going up to my bosses and asking for time off after like a week and a half of me being there. And so having to explain to someone my situation, some stranger that I didn't know or like had any real relationship with, was hard. But I was able to get some time off, and I just kind of followed the steps Planned Parenthood set out for me. So I was doing the module that I needed to do at home that was supposed to teach me all about my decision to get an abortion. And really all it did was tell me that the state of Utah prefers that I carry on with my pregnancy and maybe like give it up for adoption, choose other routes. The state of Utah like prefers that you just go with adoption instead of abortion. But I completed the module. I was still really sure of my decision to have an abortion. So then I went into a class that, again, the state of Utah mandates, where it explains kind of the procedure and what I'm about to do and what's about to happen. So had to get some time off for that, was able to do that. And then I was finally able to get into my appointment. And at this point, even though I was able to schedule it fairly quickly, we're hitting like 7 entering 8th week mark of my pregnancy. But because of the timing, I was able to get a medicated abortion, and so I was able to kind of do it in a comfortable space in my own home over like a time I had allotted myself to like, be able to feel not the best, because this is something that's really heavy that your body has to do. But I was able to do it, and my partner just kind of helped me every step of the way. And then once it was over, I was able to follow up and make sure that everything was okay with my body. And again, Planned Parenthood was there to be able to help me get on birth control and kind of explain, some of the feelings I might be feeling and kind of what my body would be experiencing for the next several months following this abortion and me being on birth control. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I don't know that I will ever necessarily want to be a mother. And it's just something that I knew, like right now where I am in life, I didn't want to be. And not having that option would have meant that I didn't maybe get to pursue some of my goals that I had set out for myself. Going back to school would have just been harder financially. I wouldn't have had as much time. Also my career, I'm pretty new into what I do. And so I would have to sacrifice a lot to try and raise this child. It would also, I know, would have put a strain on my relationship. And that's not to say that it's necessarily a bad thing or that maybe my partner is someone who would have been a bad person to do this with. It's just something that we had both talked about previously and didn't want. And to have to put either of us through that would have been a lot of sacrificing on my end to try and make this work, and it's something that I didn't want. And so I'm really glad that I had that option to get an abortion.
Thank you, Jocelyn and Angela, for sharing your stories with us. Muriel Rukeyser, a poet and activist, said, quote, "The universe is made of stories, not atoms. As a journalist, I know that facts matter, and when I'm working on a news piece, it is the real people who are impacted by policies that connect with my audience. When we listen to the very human side of abortion, pregnancy, miscarriage, sexual and reproductive health, and commit to talk with others, together we push back against shame and stigma. We strengthen and support each other. When we acknowledge the role that intersectionality plays in abortion access, rights, and justice, we see that there are many fights that we need to show up for to fully support our patients." Jocelyn and Angela, keep telling your stories. And know that here in Utah, Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah is working to ensure that we elect candidates that support each individual's decision-making about when, whether, and how to start their family. We know that when abortion access is attacked, it is people who are marginalized who are most impacted. PPAC Utah will continue to support bills to promote health equity and access and join with our community partners leading the charge on immigration justice, racism, and expanding healthcare access for everyone.
Hello, friends! Tonight, I have the special honor of recognizing 2 elected officials who made history this year as they signed on to an amicus brief with 895 other state legislators from 45 states. The brief asked the Supreme Court to uphold Roe v. Wade and reject Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban, which is a direct attack on the landmark decision that legalized abortion nationwide. The brief was filed by a national partner, the State Innovation Exchange, in the case of Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. Senator Janie Iwamoto, Representative Angela Romero, thank you for your act of courage and for your tenacious advocacy for women and for all of us. You inspire us, and we honor your leadership tonight. When I asked Senator Iwamoto and Representative Romero what inspired them to act, they answered, it's a person's decision, and it should not be politicized. We know that we will be calling on our elected officials to take a stand this year, as abortion access hangs in the balance. People like Senator Iwamoto and Representative Romero are absolutely critical allies in Utah, and they remind us to use our power for change.
Thank you to our legislators who fight to protect our reproductive rights every day. I have to say, although these are challenging times, I'm feeling hopeful. Our guests tonight have given me hope. The work of Planned Parenthood Action Council of Utah has given me hope. And you, our friends at home, have given me hope. Because I know that when we come together, we decide our future. Your support has never been more important. We must protect the successes of the generations before us, and we must continue to fight for the future that we want. PPAC Utah is doing this important work right here in Utah every day. We have more than 10,000 individuals who have signed up as ambassadors to support and promote reproductive freedom in Utah. Our Students United for Reproductive Freedom groups on 8 college campuses in Utah are learning how to advocate, organize, and inform their peers through the pandemic and beyond.
Hi, my name is Natalie Williams. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the current president of Students United for Reproductive Freedom at Utah Valley University. I got involved with Planned Parenthood when I first attended Club Rush my freshman year. I met the previous president, who was really engaged and got me really excited about reproductive freedom. Through high school, I had seen that sex education was really lacking in Utah, and I felt like I could do something to make a difference. White men should not control how we live and what we do in our lives. It makes me really mad. I am really frustrated by the fact that historically, white men have been able to say when and where folks, trans people, cisgender women, BIPOC folks can get pregnant, and they don't take the responsibility for if the pregnancy is followed through with. Society doesn't take responsibility if an unwanted pregnancy happens. Reproductive freedom is super important to me. I feel like people's choices should be made by the individual and in consultation with their doctor. And once I got involved, I could see that every single year we fight for reproductive freedom during the legislative session. And that's why the first thing I did as a SERF president was start a community lobbying group to help folks get involved and engaged in the process to fight anti-abortion legislation. Through this process, we followed HB 253 very closely, that's abortion amendments, and we were able to tell our legislators exactly how we felt about it. I have collaborated on an event to assemble and distribute period product kits for unsheltered folks in Salt Lake City. This last summer, we put together a book club centered around reproductive freedom and its intersections to our incarceration system and the lives and lived experiences of BIPOC folks, in order to put focus on those who have been historically marginalized in society. I have also hosted events on redistricting. Redistricting is the process when our legislators redraw the voting maps in the state every 10 years, and it's inextricably tied to our reproductive freedom advocacy. Planned Parenthood is much more than just women's health. More than just women can get pregnant. We need to include trans people into the conversation. And Planned Parenthood also offers a lot of other services. They do sexual health education in some sectors. They provide STI testing, access to birth control and other contraceptives. They even do vasectomies. Like, there's a lot that PPAC and Planned Parenthood does to make this community a better place. I feel like Planned Parenthood has been super supportive in my role as a Students United for Reproductive Freedom president. They are always on call. I feel super comfortable talking to them about my needs and concerns, and when I have seen things that I think could be improved, I've always felt the space and grace to be able to make those recommendations. And so I certainly believe that the folks who have come before us and have helped set up this organization and built it to be what it is now have just nurtured us in our process to take that baton and be able to make the difference that we see.
My name is Cynthia Hawk. I use she, her pronouns, and I used to be a president of the Students United for Reproductive Freedom chapter at Southern Utah University. In 2018, my really good friend Peyton started the SURF chapter at my University of Southern Utah University, and through a political event, I met him and we got engaged, and I became kind of a non-official co-president and kind of got the club started and getting more club members on and trying to elevate the events. And so eventually we both became co-presidents and we were able to put on such amazing events. I remember a really important event was we hosted Church and State, and we got the director, Holly Tuckett, to be flown in and do a Q&A, and we kind of just talked about LGBTQ rights. And then in regards to abortion rights, we had Reversing Roe as a screening, and we were able to have a really awesome engaged audience and start talking about the importance of abortion as a healthcare service. And during a time when our own state legislation was trying to put an 8 ban on abortion, and so we got very politically involved, and we did events to help navigate our students to understand how to be vocal to their personal politicians in their districts to be able to demand that we can keep safe abortion in the state of Utah. Planned Parenthood's mentorship and just working with other presidents and working with the PPAU staff really helped elevate our leadership skills and learning how to do things such as like writing a grant and being able to take our skill sets and really apply that to other things in our life. And so I think the skill sets I learned from PPAU helped me understand social advocacy and how to approach that even post-college, and really just empowered us to be able to use our voices. And I really saw a lot of members of our surf club become educated and want to become more involved in politics and want to get involved with PPAU, whether that be volunteering or just getting involved in politics, or maybe it was even just going to Capitol Hill. I think we really had a really great opportunity to showcase to a student body that we support all things that PPAU does, regardless of that being LGBTQ rights, abortion rights, or just sex education in general. I think we really elevated it for everybody on campus to be aware of their rights and be aware of what we can fight for as a team together. I think we would be looking at a lot of suffering and more marginalized disparities going on in our healthcare system. I think Planned Parenthood serves a population that is not looked after in our own healthcare system, and I think providing those subsidized services is life-changing and life-saving.
Now, we are in the fight of a lifetime to ensure comprehensive reproductive health care remains accessible, legal, and safe. We need your support now more than ever. So please, give what you can, support candidates that you believe in, reach out to your representatives, and get involved. We must link arms across our issues and work together. It has never been more important to speak up and to tell our policymakers what we want. Thank you for joining us. Good night and take care.